Welcome to Off-Duty Engineer. I am Alan, engineer, geek, DIY, a baby boomer, and now semi-retired living in Australia. This channel is for some of my scale modelling projects, plastic aircraft, wooden ships, and dioramas to display them. Cheetah intro. This is a summary of the scale model build of the Cheetah fighter, South African Air Force, in South African flag colours. I completed it in October 2024. First, photos of the final result. The Cheetah fighter is displayed on the background image as passing Table Mountain in Cape Town, South Africa. It is displayed in the new South African insignia and the South African flag colours circa 2000. The model kit is the Kinetic Cheetah D, South African Air Force, 1:48 scale. The Cheetahs were in service from 1980 to the 2000s. In later life, some were painted in the then new South African flag colours for air shows. This shows the cockpit and pilots in detail. Note the cheetah on the nose. The pilot figures were not in the kit, and were aftermarket sourced from ResKit in the Ukraine, Tory factory in Korea, and Def Model in Korea. I was based in the Air Force Base Petersburg in the north of South Africa in 1976. We had the Mirage 3 range in service then, and later the Mirage F1 for a short while. The need for a new advanced fighter was identified then. The main Cheetah development and testing was done at Atlas in Pretoria and at the Air Force Base Louis Trichardt. The Cheetahs were also based in the Air Force Base Petersburg, where I was, Overberg near Cape Town, where I lived, and I saw them later at air shows. The South African Air Force developed the Atlas Cheetah program during the 1980s. It was necessitated and expedited due to the international sanctions and arms embargo denying French Dassault from supporting the existing Mirage 3 fighters in service. The Mirage 3 frames were used as a basis, completely rebuilt and modernized with new engine and avionics. The Cheetah could carry 3 times as much ordnance as the Mirage 3 with superior agility as well. This is an example, one of many, of the resilience and innovation of the South African nation. Here are some ideas and inspiration used during the planning of this model build. This image is the original idea for the diorama. A cheetah fly past at Cape Town, Table Mountain, but without the ship below it. This was a mock-up of the diorama idea using an A4 image, about 2/3 the size of the planned A3 size. The idea was pursued. The final used a different backdrop image, and the cheetah was then flying left to right. This was the backdrop photo that was selected, with Table Mountain in Cape Town, the great sunset colouring to show off the cheetah flag and colours. Plan the painting. This is an overlay of the South African flag onto the cheetah, done with an image editor. This is a web photo of an actual cheetah, number 370, in the South African flag colours, circa 2000, used in airshow displays. This web photo is of a Cheetah 370 flying alongside a Mirage 3 at an airshow. Here are a few more web photos used for inspiration. A Cheetah cockpit, a Martin Baker ejector seat, and afterburner colours which are used to colour the exhaust. This is the details of the Kinetic Kit. The kit was Kinetic models, Cheetah D, 1:48 scale, kit number K48081. The D is for dual seat for training. Decals are South African Air Force, the new insignia, and supplied with Ecuador colours as well. 3 colour schemes are shown for South Africa for the 3 Air Force bases that they were deployed. I was based at Air Force Base Petersburg in 1976. The main air testing was done at Air Force Base Louis Trichardt. Note that the decals are cartograph. These are photos, notes and experiences during the build. The instruction book is simple, in black and white only, including the cover and the paint schemes. Total 15 pages. Because the Cheetah is based on the Mirage 3, kit number K48054, I also have this kit. There is a lot of duplication of parts and sprues. The Cheetah D specific sprues are added, but there is duplication in numbering. There are 2 different D sprues, so you need to be careful later. The color chart is based on ammo MiG, with cross-reference to Verlegen Model Color, Mr. Color, Tamiya, and Humbrol. Not all matched. I use Verlegen Air for both airbrush and handbrush, and Tamiya for handbrush. So I had to do some detail color matching, and I created a spreadsheet for this. The instruction book is simple, but details are often not clear. The details for the cockpit instrumentation panels are missing, but the Mirage booklet is clear and detailed, so I used that as well as the web images. The 3 color schemes for South Africa, for the 3 Air Force bases that they were based: Air Force Base Louis Trichardt, Petersburg, both in the north, and Overberg near Cape Town in the south. The color schemes are close to what I knew from South Africa when I was in the Air Force there. For this specific model build, I did not use any of these schemes, but selected the South African flag colors for the 2000s as the basis for this. Unboxing and sorting out the sprues. I labeled each sprue with a color note so that they could be sorted out and found easily. The quality of the plastic extrusions was very good. Only some small parts had some flash, easily cleaned up. This is my work area. To supplement the Cheetah model, I procured 4 aftermarket 3D resin kits. Note that I was building 2 Cheetahs and 1 Mirage 3C at the same time. So these figures are for all 3 planes. I estimated the 1/48 scale that I sourced would be able to fit these pilots into the models that I had, the 1/48. The pilot figure and ejector seat is the res kit from Ukraine. It was for the Mirage 2000 cockpit, which is the same size, so I selected this kit. The 2 pilot figures seated with decals for uniform is Def Models Korea. The 3 pilot figures is Tory Factory Korea. And the exhaust nozzle, also from Res Kit, I added this to add more interest and detail to the model. Releasing the first 3D resin pilot figure from its protective cage. This is the one in the ejector seat. Then test fitting it into the cockpit. I needed a bit of sanding for clearance. Yes, successful to proceed. Releasing the other pilot figures and test fitting into the cockpit. Had to include the instrumentation panel in the fit. Ensure that the cockpit glass is clear and the pilot is low enough in the seat. Yes, successful to proceed. I was building the 3 cockpits together: Cheetah number 1, Cheetah number 2, and the Mirage. Cheetah number 1 is this model with the South African flag colors. Cheetah number 2 and the Mirage will be on a separate diorama, landing next to each other with drag chutes open. I'm looking forward to building that. Here I have airbrushed the primer grey and airbrushed the cockpit in the final blue grey. I hand painted the details and the pilot figures. Here is final test fitting of the cockpit, instrumentation panels, pilot and canopy glass. Ready to go. All 3 cockpits are ready and complete. Note that the Mirage cockpit has a slightly different older model ejector seat. The rear pilots were added later because they arrived later in the post. Here's dry fitting the wings, then gluing and clamping the wings top to bottom. Many clamps were used. The fit was really good and no filling or rework was required on the edges of the wings. A compliment to Kinetic models. Gluing the body halves together, started with the cockpit first, let the glue dry, then work backwards in stages. Then dry fitting the wing assembly and the canopy again to test. This is a wheels up model, so the undercarriage doors were fitted closed. The rear doors fitted quite well, but the front doors needed some work to fit. This is a clean configuration for air shows, so no fuel drop tanks and no armaments were needed. The pylons under the wings were cleaned of the mounting points for the armaments. The in-air fueling pipe and nozzle was fitted and glued. This did get in the way a lot later, so I had to be careful not to damage it. The result was acceptable. No rework or filling was required so far. A bit of filling was required on the wing roots on top, the fuselage top seam, the nose on top, and a bit under the tail. Not much rework required, so it was a good result. A further touch of Mr. Surfacer 500 was used, then filling and finishing was completed. The canopy masking was completed, all ready for priming. Here is the priming in grey using the new Vallejo Mecha Color range and an airbrush. I used the Iwata Eclipse HBCS airbrush. I really like it. It is easy to use and to clean. I set the air to 15 to 18 psi for painting Vallejo Model Air and about 20 psi for Vallejo varnish. Note the collection of Vallejo Model Air paints. Here I am checking the colors. There will be 7 colors used outside. The blue-grey on the nose is complete. This is the masking for the white and the yellow. Use the web images and my image as a guide. Here is fully masked for the white and the yellow areas. The yellow color is not very strong, so 3 coats were laid. Next time I'll remember this and use pink as a base under the yellow to enhance. Painting is a long process. Paint a layer, wait till the next day to dry. Paint another layer, wait till the next day. Paint another layer, wait till the next day. Then a layer of gloss varnish and wait till the next day. Only then can the masking be removed to see the result. 7 colors plus the gloss varnish, it took a few weeks. Here is removing the masking for the white and the yellow. The overall was pleased with the result. The primer under the masking on the left hand side had lifted. This was probably due to the base plastic not being clean enough before laying the primer. Fortunately, it was easy to lightly sand away and a new primer layer over that area. Here masking is completed, ready for the green section. The green is laid down. The green looked more like light teal, so I was worried about the final outcome. But 2 coats, then a clear varnish layer, and the color looked much better and acceptable. Quite a good result. Need to fix up the rest of that primer error on the left hand side, but it worked out okay. The primer is repaired and then masked for the red and the blue. The red covered very well. The blue was dense but coated unevenly. Needed 3 coats of each to get the red and the blue even. Then the clear gloss. All masking is removed to inspect the results so far. I was very satisfied so far. Next was to do the black around the cockpit section, including the canard wings and the canopy. Masking for the black is prepared. The mask canopy is fitted, lightly fixed with a drop or 2 of canopy glue so that it can be removed again later. The black layer is on, 2 coats were required. Then the gloss varnish layer, another few days. The body masking is removed, but the canopy masking was left on. A few minor places fixed up by hand painting the Vallejo Air with a very fine brush and a steady hand. And then a final 2 coats of gloss varnish. Being an airshow plane, I selected to go with the gloss varnish as a finish. Then all masking could finally be removed. The final painting result. The decals were next. Then a final layer of gloss varnish to seal in the decals. The rear pilot figure was now prepared. Only the upper body was used, the legs were not used, because not enough space for fitting into the cockpit. The small space allowed this, as the lower body would not be seen anyway, especially with the canopy closed, as in flight. An acceptable result. The exhaust was painted using multiple colors and images as a guide. This was the exhaust supplied in the kit. I was waiting for the 3D res kit to arrive. It had more detail in it. Easy to replace later because this exhaust was only held in with a small drop of canopy glue. Finally, fix the canopy with canopy glue. I was working on the diorama backdrop in between painting. This will follow next. Next, we will go over the build of the backdrop for the diorama. The first step was to print the images onto standard A3 paper with the A3 inkjet printer I have at home, using high resolution settings. This cost a bit of ink, but the result was clear and crisp. A sheet of clear plastic was then stuck over the front of the page for protection. This was done carefully, using a credit card to slowly roll the plastic along, removing air bubbles. It looked good so far. The backing was made of structural foam, 28mm thick. The foam can be cut with a sharp, thin-bladed knife against a straight edge. The final dimensions of the back was 415 mm wide, 350 mm high. The base was the same, 450 mm wide and 250 mm deep. The edging was 20 mm by 8 mm wood. The 8 mm subtracted from the foam, dimensions as needed. The gluing was with acrylic Gorilla Glue, clamped, squared and left overnight. The result is very strong and suitable for this diorama. The surfaces were then all sanded using an orbital sander. Acrylic wood glue was then painted onto the foam surface. The image page fitted on. The edges were trimmed and masking tape along the edges to keep it in place. But disaster, because the water-based wood glue made the inkjet ink run, spoiling the image. Needed to start again with a new plan. The paper was ripped off and the surfaces resanded with the orbital sander to be smooth again. I then filled all the slots and painted the edges and surfaces grey at this stage with the standard acrylic household paint and a small roller for a smoother finish. Next was planning and making the support for the cheetah in the diorama. A strip of clear 3mm thick polycarbonate sheet cut to 25mm wide, 300mm long was prepared and the edges sanded. The dimensions and bends were worked out and a 1:1 scale sketch was prepared as a guide for bending. Bending was done using a heat gun. The polycarb is really tough, so it is a balance between enough heat to bend it and not so hot that it bubbles. Then test fit to the support. 2 brass 1mm diameter pins were fixed to the support that are lined up with the existing 2 holes in the cheetah body. The support positioned the cheetah to the left of center so that it was flying into the frame. The result seemed to work well. The solution for the background images was to have the 2 printed professionally at snap print on a laser printer onto 200 grams per square meter paper. The cost was quite reasonable, about $14 per page for 2 pages. Next time I would use even thicker paper, like 400 GSM. Double-sided sticky tape, not foam tape, was used. Strips about 30mm intervals put onto the paper and the opposite direction onto the backing board and completely along the edges. This was then carefully adhered from inside outwards using the credit card method to aid it going flat with no bubbles. The photo here is the result. Very satisfactory. That is all. I hope that you enjoyed this. Please follow, like, subscribe, etc. See you next time. Thank you.